Good morning, everyone. Glad to be here with the Lytx Drive Cam folks this morning. A little bit about cargo transporters. We are located in North Carolina, the beautiful foothills of the Smoky Mountains. Cargo Transporters is about a $100 million revenue company. We operate 484 power units, about 1,600 trailers. We have a culture of family and safety at Cargo Transporters, and that's why we have partnered with Lytx, powered by DriveCam. Being a company, again, that we look at family and safety as being our culture, we felt like it was a next progressive step, getting involved with the event recorders. We look at the safety of our drivers as being our #1 priority, and also the safety of the motoring public. One of the things that I say about the event recorders, they are the truth. And what happens in the event of an accident sometimes, a driver's perception or his focus may be much different from what actually happens. And the longer the time span between the accident and the investigation or discussion with him, his thoughts or his ideas or his facts change somewhat. So again, in reviewing the camera, you can move it, each second or quarter second of a time and analyze all the events that happen with the driver or the surrounding area. One reason for Lytx, again, was because we looked at it and they had a turnkey solution in using their product. And what I'd like to do is actually show a couple videos. And when I speak of being priority one as far as safety of our drivers, this was one of our clips of our driver here. There were 4 events that happened here that could have resulted in a severe accident or crash. And fortunately, by the grace of God, we were very fortunate here. But we learned after seeing this was something we definitely need to do. You see the maneuver, and when I mentioned 4 different accidents that potentially would have happened, had the truck in front of him hit the brakes hard, as opposed to moving to the left, he would have rear-ended the USA truck. Secondly, the lane guidance went off, which then woke him up. Had he had not been woke at that time, he would have hit the Swift. He shifts to the left without even looking out his mirror, which if it had been a car on the left, he would have taken it out. Then also he ends up off the road, which potentially could have laid the truck over. We knew as soon as we saw this clip, this was a driver that we would not be able to rehab. He had already had an incident with us approximately 5 weeks earlier. And basically it was one of those things where it was looked at that, everything else looked good on him, but we didn't have what we saw here. It's possible that he went to sleep on the previous incident that he had, but again, we had to depart. And that was our first driver that was kind of a negative with this, but yet to stick with our culture, we felt it was something that needed to be done. I mentioned fraudulent claims. This next clip is a video that we just released. Basically, within months after being on the drive cam, this accident took place. The next day, the person was in a neck brace and had secured an attorney. After about 90 days, we were trying to figure out how to go about things. We actually got an IA to take the clip to the attorney, and after viewing the clip, the attorney dropped the client. Now, it's been 3 years since this accident took place, but we had to wait to see if another attorney would pick up the client before we released the footage. So this is one of the things where actually a claim was averted and we were exonerated, the driver was exonerated because of the clip. Here's another one here that could have ended in a very fatal accident. I'll let you see the clip first. Whenever we first got the call, it was reported there was a potential fatality, but actually the driver, the other vehicle, walked from the accident. But what happened is this individual rounded the curve, dropped their cell phone, and was reaching on the other side of the vehicle to get their cell phone, and actually admitted that. Had they not admitted the claim, or the liability, then we potentially could have been at risk with no black marks really from either vehicle. Fortunately for us, if you see at the very end, the windshield flies out in the field. We're able to retrieve the windshield with the camera still attached to the windshield and bring it to the office to be downloaded. Just these two clips are prime examples why that we were early adopters. Another liability, this was a situation where a young lady merged in front of us. By the time it was within 10 miles of our facility. The mother had already arrived on the site, was trying to get the trooper to cite the driver, and basically all we did is told that we had the cameras in the truck. We didn't even show the footage, and the other young lady was cited. As far as how to deploy, that's a question for people, and it's really got to be, your culture has to accept it. And it has to be a top-down thing. It can't be something, if you're in the safety area, you've got to convince that CFO, that CEO, that chief operating officer, that they've got to support it and be a part of it, because there's no way that anyone in the company can waver from this process. And with the deployment, you've got to allow a lot of discussion with your drivers, but it has to be constructive, and the message has to be consistent throughout. With this, the best way is to show the actual clips to the drivers, show the ones where our drivers or your drivers were exonerated. We actually began in 2011, May of 11, and with a trial of 30. We were fully deployed with 450 units September 4th of 2012. And after we got the first 140 in, we couldn't get them in fast enough for us in management and for some of the drivers as well. Again, with that constructive dialogue, that consistent message, it will work in your favor. We each month have a roundtable meeting, and we sit and we discuss topics that are near and dear to the drivers' hearts. And the first probably 8 to 10 months, there was a lot of discussion. The last 15 months, there has been no discussion about the cameras or the event recorders. And it's when I look back on it, thought it was going to be a difficult time, and I look at it today and think it was really a breeze in going through that process. The staff at DriveCam Lytx is very responsive. They provided training to our coaches. I know one of the questions that always come up is an ROI, and it's hard to put a measurement or a cost on an accident. It is for us, but we know there's a lot of situations. I've got one right now that's ongoing that I'll just say probably will save or pay for a year of the cameras with the event that happens, and that might be an event that another year or two that I could show and everyone would understand. But coming from a company that values safety and values culture, I've never had to actually go to our CFO or our CEO and try to justify an ROI when it comes to safety equipment. And that's kind of been a blessing for me and managing the company. When I look at the results of the DriveCam, and we kind of feel like there is a driver awareness, and I shared yesterday, we had 41 drivers that operated an entire year last year without having one coachable event, and our goal this year would be to have 50 or more, and I think we can achieve it. So it makes a better driver. The drivers also, again, in seeing the exonerations, has helped a lot as well. This driver, and seeing what happened, had the presence of mind and was able to stop the vehicle or avoid the collision. The driver did stop after the accident, pulled down the highway a little bit. The person here was not injured. But again, we feel like we've made better and safer drivers. We kind of feel like with the coaching, the training, that we've been able to keep our CSA scores low. We're a company, again, with the culture of safety that has liked to pride ourselves on the CSA numbers. I sit in some meetings and I hear the discussions about this, the CSA, and naturally we're a company that we do not fight the CSA numbers because we have had good numbers for a long time. In 2010, just to kind of give you an idea, we were on the crash side, we're 52. Currently, the February numbers were at 13. So again, it's something we've worked on and continue to work on. One of the things, and I've got a clip here, you kind of learn, like the very first one I showed, that not all drivers are coachable, and there is a downside. And we had to institute a disciplinary action and work with that to try to coach people, and we've been successful. And there are situations where we haven't been successful, and we have to depart company with some. But this is one here that the driver had no clue what he did wrong. "53 miles an hour was the speed that he went through that intersection." And we don't have the volume on it here, but he's actually listening to a book on tape, an audio book on tape. So I'm not a proponent, and I do not condone the use of even hands-free, nor an audio or a book on tape. So the final question, or I guess I'd like to leave, or people may ask, would we do it again? Definitely, we would do it again. And it's probably one of the best things that we did from the safety side. Any questions?
Why did you say that they stay alert? Because they know they're being recorded?
Right. I mean,
Repeat the question.
what Angie asked, why did I say they're staying alert? Well, it's that awareness that it is there, and it is not actually tape them. It will only tape if there is an event, and then it actually records that event. So it's not constantly taping. It's just we'll record a 12-second event if they have a hard braking or hit a pothole or something that sets it off. But it's that awareness. I mean, you know someone's there. If you do something wrong, that you're going to possibly be caught. And that's the seatbelt issue is one. There was a study that came out last week that said only 1 in 6 CDL holders wear their seatbelt. I don't know if you saw that or not, but let me tell you, if you've got people out there operating your trucks, they're not wearing their seatbelts. At least 1 in 6. And we found that out, and that was one of our first campaigns, seatbelts. And one of the clips that I showed you where the truck actually flipped over, had that driver not had a seatbelt on, when that windshield went out, he probably would have been right with it and probably wouldn't be here today. And he did not suffer any injuries. Again, besides the cell phones, the seatbelt's another one of my pet peeves. But that's something we found out early on in our test, that we had a lot of people that were not wearing.
Do you coach for following distance? And if you do you think that's helped you avoid collisions as a result of drivers increasing the following distance?
The following distance is one of our worst events. I mean, as far as numbers, and that's probably one of our toughest ones to coach. When you're sitting there with the driver, I mean, we're getting better with it. I don't want to make mistakes, but I want to sit here and tell you something that's not the truth either. Drivers always have excuses. If I leave too much room, someone's going to pull in front of me. There's all these things that happen. So the coach, to be able to be effective, has to be strong, has to have a consistent message and delivering to that driver. Again, I'd like to say we are effective, but we still have more coaching events on the following too close than any other situation.
What caused that stop sign? One, he didn't hit his brakes, did he, or did he?
What was asked was the stop sign event, what caused the camera to go off. If you think about it, most intersections, for some reason you always have a drop, a resurface on maybe one of the roads and not the other ones, and they try to tie it in. But it was the surfacing that when he dropped down into that intersection. So there's a lot of things, and I always and referred to as happenstance. The camera or the event is recorded happenstance, And then what happens as they review, they're looking to see, is that person eating, is that person smoking, is that person got their seatbelt on? What were they doing that was right or wrong? So in a week's time, for our 493 units, we have approximately 600 events that go off, but only about 58 to 60 or 10% then are coachable events. So had he stopped at that stop sign, it wouldn't have went off. So I mean, again, it's you catch things. So that's why I'm saying all the seat belts. The recorder didn't go off because they weren't wearing the seat belt. The recorder went off for some other reason, and it was caught then that they didn't have the seat belt. And I will tell you also, not only seat belts, but if you're operating equipment out there, if you think your drivers aren't using handheld, I will tell you they are. Because we even with the cameras see that. That's kind of one where we institute a very heavy disciplinary practice, and in January we had 7, in February we had 2. So I mean, it still happens, and we've been operating the cameras close to 4 years in some of the units this May.
The communication with the drivers and getting them on board, what were some of your strategies for that?
Well, you know, it was one of the things we knew we wanted to do it, and we were going to do it, so we spent time talking to our drivers. I spent probably, I think it was about a 3-week stretch before we were going to put the first one in from the date that we signed and said we were going to do it. And I went every day and we gathered up drivers, 8 or 10, and I spent time. I actually got all of our staff from our safety department, our operations department, and we all met and pretty much we all agreed to buy into it, and not to come across and say, well, safety's doing this, or the third floors, it's referred to a lot of time, the third floors, you know, doing this. We're all doing this. And again, there was some pushback, but the way we went about things, we installed first in our regional trucks, our local trucks. We went with our trainer drivers, our new entry drivers, our drivers that were on safety probation. Then we had people that came to us and said, hey, I want them in, and that was a large number as well. And then we said, okay, now it's time to get the last 250. And so within about a 3-month time, and we installed 250 more units.
A follow-up to Jody's comment, what about owner-operators?
We do not employ owner-operators, all company drivers. That might be a whole different challenge and something I can't address.
We just started with Drive Cam 2 months ago, and we were worried about the driver issue, but it went away real fast because the driver's always blamed. You know, it's always blamed. And in a month, I think we've had 3 incidents that the driver has been exonerated on. And we just keep showing that over and over to the drivers that didn't want it, just all the time say, look, this could have been you. So it kind of went away. And the other thing too, we were looking at cost, and we're thinking it's like 0.004 cents per mile. So if you think about like what Dennis was saying, the cost of a crash, at that less than a penny a mile, we're hoping it's going to work. We're fairly new at it, but we had one last week where a car spun out in front of 3 or 4 cars, and cars went everywhere. Our truck went everywhere. He missed them all, but you know, it did cause it. And the other thing we tell our drivers, you're the reason the camera goes off, not the office, not Drive Cam. You're the one that activates it by a sudden stop, a sudden move, and then they go, oh, yeah, I guess so. Because they're worried about Big Brother. But Big Brother's not the one doing it. You're the one.
Thank you, Roland. Maybe you ought to have been up here. And that's exactly what we try to do. And the more clips you share, are able to share with your staff, with your drivers. So we have kind of a war room, and our drivers have access to go in there. And we have what we call our T drive, our network drive, and we've got probably 30 or 40 videos loaded in there that we can take anyone in there and view them, and we have, and we continue to do it.